it's Bren. I just got done editing the video that you're about to watch, which I filmed a few nights ago. And I'm really sorry that it's so long. I had no idea when I was filming it that it was going to be this long. But I guess it is 7 years of my life. So, it's what it turned out to be. I thought about splitting it up, but then, your comments get split and everything. And it's like, I want to just keep it all together. But feel free to watch it in pieces. Feel free to just listen to it while you're driving or falling asleep. It's not like you have to be watching me, right? If you want to, if it's something that interests you. I was apparently feeling very feisty this night when I filmed this. I can tell I was getting a little bit of an attitude here and there. And it comes off maybe a little harsh. Like I want to say like that I'm hard on Pete, but also at the same time like this is what happened. Like I don't know that I was actually like hard on him. I'm just telling the story and this is what happened from my perspective. So it's crossed my mind that he might see this and be upset about it, but I don't know what I can say other than this is what I experienced during those 7 years, and there were good times and there were bad times, but overall, I went through a lot, and so this is my story. This is the story of Pete. Enjoy. Hey, it's Bren. I've been waiting to do this video for quite some time. This video is going to be about Pete. If you don't know who Pete is, in my last video, I assigned some new fake names to some old boyfriends. And, well, at least one old boyfriend. And Pete is now the name of the guy that I dated for a little over 7 years. He was on this channel from time to time. You knew him under a different name, but now he's an ex, so he gets an alias. I made a video about Pete when I started this channel in 2017, and I was also drinking a beer in that video. In fact, the thumbnail for the video was me like toasting a beer, and the video was called Why My Last Relationship Failed, But I Let It Drag On for 3 years Anyway. And here we are again, and now I feel like I should call the video Why My Last Relationship Failed, But I Let It Drag for 7 years Anyway, but that would also be too sad. But I do think that I should do a matching thumbnail. So even though this looks like a wine glass, it is a beer glass from Pilot Project Brewing in Chicago. Something like this. That looks good. That'll be our thumbnail. Y'all, I don't know if I'm ready for this, but we're going to do it anyway. Pete. I should say that I do still talk to Pete. We are on speaking terms. The last time that I went out with him or saw him in any kind of dating capacity was New Year's Eve of 2021 going into 2022. So December 31st, 2021. And we kind of got into it that night, and that was the last time that I spoke with him for about 6 months. And then 6 months later, we ended up texting again, just in a very basic friend's way. He was at that time, as I knew he would be, in a relationship with the woman that he cheated on me with for several years, that he constantly gaslit me about and told me that I was crazy for thinking there was anything in between those two, that there was any way that he would like her like that. I was nuts for that because, there was no way. There was nothing between them. And of course, 6 months after I stopped talking to him, they were living together and he was trying to impregnate her. So, maybe I wasn't so crazy, right? And you can decide if you think that cheating is an appropriate word for what happened. He would argue that it's not, because he would argue that he did not physically put his in her and therefore it wasn't cheating. But there was definitely a lot of lying, and I feel like at the very least we can call it emotional cheating. But we still chat here and there. I probably would say that we might text every 2 or 3 weeks if there's a reason. It'll be like, hey, did you see so-and-so's on tour again? Or he might text me and say, oh, I'm in Milwaukee for my kid's baseball, and I'm at this brewery that he knows that I used to love. Do you want anything? Or I texted him the other day because I had a computer question, and I knew he would know the answer. And we would hang out sometimes. Once every couple of months. Once every 2 to 3 months, we might grab a beer together. Even though I was in a relationship with Ian, He was in a relationship with, you know what, we're going to need a fake name for her. Fake name generator says Emily. But yeah, every couple of months I might grab a drink with Pete, and Ian had no problem with it. I think that doesn't work for everyone in every relationship. My sister, it just blows her mind that Ian didn't have a problem with me hanging out with Pete sometimes, but she's also in one of those relationships with her boyfriend where they like read each other's phones and stuff. So, that's why her and I never fought over men. I don't want to be with someone that doesn't trust me, But Ian would sometimes say like, I just don't understand why you want to be friends with him and why you want to hang out with him when he treated you so poorly. And basically cheated on you. And the thing is, I do have my reasons. Although, looking back at the entire situation, I do think that he mistreated me quite a bit, Pete did. And actually, one of the benefits of hanging out with Pete every once in a while is that I get a bit of closure in the form of, I don't know, just giving him a little shit sometimes about how he did treat me. There's been a couple of occasions where it's mostly good-natured, we'll be hanging out and something will come up and I'll be like, yeah, you didn't do that when it was me, or yeah, you kind of screwed me over on that point. And he'll just kind of be like, yeah, I know. Whatever. But I will say this right now. I have not heard from him in a few weeks. The last time that I messaged him was the night my dad was in surgery, because the Something Corporate, a band we both used to love, live stream 20-year reunion. We had talked about it, and he had expressed interest in knowing if they would announce a full tour after the live stream. And I was watching the live stream from the hospital room next to my dad. He had gotten out of surgery 30 minutes before the live stream. We had just gotten settled back in the room, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to watch this live stream from this hospital room. And the live stream indicated that they were doing another show next year in 2024. No details, but I texted that to Pete. And I also was telling him about how my dad was in surgery. It was pretty late at this point. The live stream started at 11 p.m. our time, because it was actually happening in Vegas. And the next day, because he used to work in one of the local hospital systems, I texted him a question about an oncologist, and he answered the question. I haven't heard anything from him since. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we typically might exchange a text every 2 to 3 weeks. It has now been a month, just about, like almost going on 4 weeks since my dad's surgery. And literally the last time I talked to him, my dad had just gotten out of surgery and we didn't have biopsy results yet, and he might have cancer. And Pete has not messaged me. Everyone else that I know, people, obviously friends, family, but even like loose acquaintances that I have, friends of friends, people that I don't usually talk to on a regular basis, who I talk to more infrequently than I talk to Pete, have asked me how my dad is doing and how I'm doing, and I have heard nothing from Pete. So I don't know. But it's not doing him any favors in my mood tonight as I film this video. But you know what? Honestly, it's probably just that we're not really that good of friends. And I have my reasons for still continuing to communicate with him and hang out with him sometimes. And I know that he has his reasons for continuing to want to hang out with me sometimes. And I know exactly what those reasons are. But I think I should stop prefacing the video and get past the prologue and actually get into the story. So here is the story of me and Pete. I met Pete in October 2014 on a dating website. I had been doing online dating for nearly 2 years at that point. I'd gotten out of a long-term relationship at the end of 2012 and online dated all through 2013, most of 2014. And during that time, I had a couple significant relationships. They were just not super long ones, but I fell in love a couple of times. I had my heart broken a few times. A lot of those stories still exist on this channel, but my heart had been put through the ringer. And Pete seemed pretty normal when we met. We went on our first date downtown, and the first place we went, it went well. So we went to like several more places. We sort of bar hopped on a strip. The slight red flag that I ignored was that he was on the rebound. He had just gotten out of a relationship. His kid's mother, they had been engaged but never married. They had 2 kids, ages 2 and 5 at the time, and she cheated on him and left for the other guy. but it didn't work out with that other guy, but that's what happened. He lived in a house that he owned that she had lived in with him, and then she moved out into a condo that they co-owned. This seems monotonous, but it becomes a very important detail later in the story. So they had owned a condo together that both their names were on. Then he bought this house. She moved into the house. They rented the condo. When she left him, she kicked the renters out and moved back into that condo that his name was still on. So, for the most part, our relationship was pretty normal, except for the fact that he did have his kids most of the time. He definitely had custody of them way more than she did, which is slightly abnormal for a guy, right? Especially in Illinois, that's not usually how it goes. But it wasn't because he was awarded that custody, it's because she did not ever want to take the kids. Now, I want to pause here, because I am not here to tear down another woman that I've never met. And I've never met her because she threatened me when we first started dating. But I think in retrospect, it's been many, many years since then. Everyone was very emotional at that time. I just want to say up front, I don't have her side of the story. So I'm not here to tear her down. I fully admit that I only saw things through Pete's eyes. But it was a big strain on our relationship because he was always fighting with her. It was super heated. It was just crazy. It got legal. It was in court. His life became obsessed, and then mine by default with this custody battle. She was a bartender. He was a computer programmer. She fought for custody of the kids, but then when she got that custody, which she got just because she's a woman, she never took them. So he was paying her, but she wasn't actually watching them. And that's just how it was. But it was weird for me because I'd never been in a serious relationship with anyone before with kids. I had dated people with kids, but never to the point where I met the kids. So this was new for me. And it was different and it was a little weird, but I kind of was up for it. Like, I thought maybe this will be great for me. I know I don't want my own kids, but this is a way I can have kids in my life, but on a slightly less intense level. And we dated pretty happily for a few months, even though we didn't really get to hang out one-on-one a lot. We would hang out every Monday night at this bar up the street because on Mondays, the mom would watch the kids because there was nothing for her to do. I guess it was Monday night. It was lame. But Pete and I had fun. And one thing that I really liked about Pete was that we had great conversation. It's something that I still like about Pete. It's one of those reasons that I still hang out with him, even though he did me dirty for many years. We can just talk, and like I feel like we're kind of on the same intellectual level. We mostly agree on most things about like religion, politics, philosophy, but we don't totally agree. It's at a point where like it's very interesting. We can like oppose each other in ways that are intriguing, but we don't get in fights. And we could just go out on a Monday night to an empty bar and be the only two people there and have a really good time. I think that in some of the videos that I've posted on this channel of us together, you can see that we just kind of could like get along and have fun just talking and it just being the two of us. And that was one of the things that I always liked the most about Pete. But that custody battle weared on me. One of the big problems that I had in the relationship was that Pete did not know how to have multiple priorities, and he did not know how to compromise. Pete wanted me to move in with him because when the kid's mother was awarded custody and therefore child support, he couldn't afford to live in his house anymore on his own, even though he had the kids 6 out of 7 days of the week. He was still paying her and he couldn't pay the mortgage. So he wanted me to move in and I really considered it. I moved a bunch of my stuff into his house, even like boxes and things like it was summer and I moved my winter clothes in. Like I didn't get quite to the point where I was moving furniture yet, but I was ready. But something that really bothered me was that Pete was, I'm just going to say it, filthy. I mean, he was so messy. He's by far the messiest man that I've ever dated. And I've dated a lot of pretty messy dudes. My ex-husband wasn't clean. Adam wasn't clean. Pete was a whole different level of messy. And his kids, he wasn't teaching them to be clean either. It wasn't that he was a bad dad, but he just kind of, his relationship with his kids was one of more like, we're buds, we're friends. It was kind of like a frat house over there. And I had a problem with the fact that, like, I don't feel comfortable using any of the bathrooms here because there's pee on every single toilet seat. There were 3 cats. The litter boxes were not scooped. Dishes were everywhere. Food was everywhere. I would like go over there, there'd be ants everywhere. If you moved a piece of furniture, you'd find like 7 different types of food underneath. And I would clean, but he didn't want to teach his kids to be clean. He had no like rules for them or anything. And also he just wasn't clean himself. And I would talk to him about it and say, like, these are my expectations. If you want me to live here, I don't want to be your maid. I don't want to be your servant. I don't want to resent you and the kids because I'm always cleaning up after you. And he left it all on me. Well, you can come in and you can give them rules and you can give them chores and you can tell them what to do. And I was like, I'm not going to talk to your son about wiping his pee off the toilet seat if he misses the bowl. That's something that you as the parent should be doing, not me. That's awkward. But he wouldn't do it. And it just felt like he was expecting me to compromise so much of my life for him, but he wasn't willing to do anything for me. And in any relationship, when you come together, you know, you're both going to compromise and you're going to have to come. In a typical relationship, maybe you both come 50%. In a relationship where one person has kids and one person doesn't, the person who doesn't have kids is probably going to compromise more. But all I wanted from Pete was for him to come like 2%, like just to show me that he cared. And yet Pete was always just kind of like, this is my life. This is how I run it. You can come on in, but we're not going to change for you. In fact, Pete told me on multiple occasions that the house would be cleaner if I moved in because then I would be there to help him clean it. But he didn't clean it at all. And what it felt like he was saying was, you can move on in and clean our house. And that is kind of what was happening when I wasn't even officially living there yet. But honestly, it wasn't just about the mess. That was not the only issue. I felt in general that he did not know how to have multiple priorities. His kids were his priority, as they should be for any parent. I fully supported them being the first priority. Absolutely. They would be my first priority as well. But if you have kids and you also choose to date, you have to learn how to have multiple priorities because your kids will always be your first priority, but you also need to prioritize your relationship in some way. And Pete did not know how to do that. All that mattered to him was his kids. That's it. And that's admirable. But when you are that kind of person, I think maybe you shouldn't be dating then. Because I felt that I was always just in the background, the leftovers, the time filler. I really felt pushed aside, and it was hard for me to articulate what I was feeling, but I would look at other relationships, my friends who dated people with kids and how their relationships were. I would look at that and I could see that like the men that they were dating had kids, but still prioritized their relationship, still made room for the girlfriend or wife who wasn't their kid's mother, but still made her feel special too, and had a balance of things I do for my kids and things I do for my relationship. And Pete did not do that. But anytime, and at the beginning of this video, I started off by saying Pete gaslit me a lot, and I think that's kind of the theme of this relationship. This isn't necessarily gaslighting in the same way, but he always would be telling me that my thoughts and feelings were wrong. One of the other big things was, if I'm going to move in here, there are 3 bathrooms in this house. Can the kids not use the master bathroom? Because that will become my bathroom. And it's very, very messy now with kid mess, you know? And that's normal because you have kids. But they literally walk past another bathroom to get to that bathroom. Maybe like we can have them not use that bathroom if I'm going to move in here, just so that I feel comfortable in this house and I have a little bit of space that is an adult space. And I feel like those were reasonable things to ask for. But anytime I said anything about his parenting, the way he ran his household, anything, he would get mad at me and say, you don't know, you don't have kids. Anytime that I brought up, well, when I was a kid, he would say, I'm sick of you comparing your childhood to how my kids are raised. And it's like, But that's normal. You're telling me that I don't know what it's like to have kids, but I do know what it's like to be a kid. So it's pretty normal for me to make that comparison. And I have friends with kids. I know kids. I'm not an alien from another planet where they don't have children. But anytime that I wanted to critique, make a suggestion, anything, even when it came to, you want me to move in here so that you can keep this house. You were asking me to do you a huge favor, to move in with you, to help you raise your children. And all I'm saying is, can we have them put their plates in the sink? And you are yelling at me like, you don't know, you don't have kids, you don't know how hard it is. But I'm literally like over there all the time witnessing the situation and telling him, like, when I was a kid, we could put our plates in the sink and that was normal, and it didn't like scar us for life. I'm not in therapy now as an adult being like, I can't believe my parents made me put my plates in the sink. But he would act like I couldn't say anything because I didn't have kids. It was those reasons, along with the just absolutely wicked, horrible fighting with the kid's mother, just the battle that was playing out in court and outside of court. It was a lot of stress. It was a lot. And I didn't end up moving in with him. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because I saw what that future would be like. And it would be me being a maid and having no input on the household and family dynamic that I was being asked to come into. I couldn't do it. So I didn't move in, and we broke up as a result. But we kind of, during that time, were a little bit off and on already. We'd get into a fight, we wouldn't talk for a few days, then he would come over with like a card and flowers and beg me back, so to speak, and we get back together. So things were already a little rocky, but when I didn't move in with him, that was really kind of like a big deal. Like, we didn't talk for, I don't know, a month and a half, I don't remember. I'd probably remember if I went back and watched the other video I made about him, but I'm not going to do that right now. Don't want to relive it. So in early 2017, we hadn't been talking because I didn't move in, but we had concert tickets. And he hit me up one day and was like, do you still want to go to this concert? And I was like, yeah, I can still go to the concert with him just as friends. Why not? We have the tickets. That becomes a pattern. I would constantly tell myself I could just be his friend, and then that didn't work out so well. We went to the concert. We were there with a couple of his friends. And at one point, he was just talking about something. I don't remember what it was, but he's scrolling through pictures on his phone, just showing me something. And he scrolls one too far, and a picture comes up, and it's like a sexy selfie of a girl, like with her finger in her mouth, like wearing like skimpy clothing. I didn't get a great look at it, but it was like, oh, and whatever, it was fine. We hadn't been dating. He could do whatever he wanted. It was just like a little awkward for a second. And then he goes, oh my God, no, don't worry about that. That's just so-and-so's stupid little sister. So he had this friend, his friend's wife's sister is who this was. I'd met the friend, I'd met the wife, never the sister. But apparently he had the sexy selfie saved of his friend's wife's little sister. But what he told me is, oh, no, that's just so-and-so's stupid little sister. Like, absolutely do not care about this at all. And at the time, I didn't make a big deal of it because whatever. We ended up having a lot of fun at that concert. And it just kind of reminded me of the good points about Pete. Again, the like going out and having a lot of fun, having a lot of really good conversation. I always felt like Pete understood me. He got me. That was part of the draw. Pete and I were really great when we were outside of the house, when we were going to other cities and going to concerts and going out to breweries or restaurants or whatever. We like to do the same things. We had a great time together, but it was the domestic part that we just couldn't get, We just couldn't live together or figure that part out, but we just kept having so much fun together. We ended up getting back together after the concert, and I remember that I really tried during that time. Because I hadn't moved in with him, he had to sell his house. And he had moved into a rental from his friend. So we're probably going to need some more fake names. His friend Joe. It was Joe's wife, Becky, who her little sister was Emily. Joe had a rental home. Joe's parents actually owned this house. Joe helped them with like the handiwork and stuff if something needed to be done with this house. And they rented the house to Pete. So Pete's renting a house from his friend Joe. And it was a really crappy house. It was like just needed a lot of repairs, a lot of remodeling, a lot of updates. But I thought, you know what? And what would happen all the time is I'd break up with Pete and I'd go on online dates, and the online dates would be terrible. They would be so bad that I would be like, you know what? Pete's not that bad. Maybe Pete's fine. At least Pete's sane. You know, he's messy, but he's sane. And I would tell myself, nope, I can make it work with Pete because the comparison was so terrible. So I started going over to Pete's other new rental house, and I would clean. I would clean it. I was trying to help out. I was like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can live here. Maybe I can be this domestic goddess and stepmother of the year that Pete requires. But it was even worse than the first time in retrospect. Like, I would come over to hang out with like Pete or Pete and the kids, like we all sit around and play a board game or something. But what would happen instead is I would come over and Pete would disappear because I was there to watch the kids. So I'd come over and then I'd have my eyes on the kids, and all of a sudden Pete would just be gone. And he wouldn't even tell me where he was going. He would just disappear, and I'd find him like 2 hours later around the back of the house smoking cigarettes, talking to his friends on the phone. Or I would come over and he'd be like, I'm just going to run up the street to the store. I'll be right back. And then he'd be gone for a couple of hours. And it was like, if you need me to watch the kids for you, I will do that. I'm your girlfriend, apparently. So I will do you that favor, but set up that expectation that that's what you're asking me to come over for right now. Instead of every time I come over to hang out with you, you disappear and you take advantage of me being there to watch the kids so you can go do whatever else you want to do. So I was getting frustrated, but I was really trying to make it work. I knew that when we were apart, he had set up a vacation to Disney World with him and Joe and Becky. Becky had 2 kids and then Pete's kids. So he was going to Disney World with Joe and Becky, the kids. I knew this. I'm not really an amusement park person. I never tried to really get in on it. I thought it was like a little weird, but I was like, okay, that's fine. We had decided officially, Pete and I, that we were back together. Boyfriend and girlfriend, committed relationship, Facebook official. But I started to notice that Emily, who I knew was the sexy selfie girl, would sometimes call him very late at night. We'd be like sitting around watching a movie. It'd be midnight. His phone would ring. He'd look at it real quick. I'd see the word Emily on the screen. Then he'd like put it in his pocket. One time we were in Madison. We were out at a restaurant. Again, it was like after midnight. His phone rings. It's plugged into the car so I can clearly see on the screen, Emily. And I would ask, like, why is this girl, Becky's stupid little sister, calling you so late at night all the time? And he told me it was because she was depressed and suicidal. And she was going to kill herself, but she really needed someone to talk to. And he was the only person that she could talk to. Why? He had met her like one time at a wedding. Like, I don't know how he became the only person that she could talk to. And I don't know how true it is that she was super depressed and suicidal. It all sounds a little BS-y to me now in retrospect, which is why I'm not taking it super seriously. Obviously, that's very serious if that was actually what was going on. But in retrospect, I think he was just telling me that that's what it was so that I couldn't balk at it or have a problem with it, right? So one day I'm cleaning his house like I always was at that time in my life. And I come across a notebook and I see on the notebook it's written down Disney trip, like flight prices, 4 kids, 4 adults. And I know right away he was lying by omission by not telling me that, of course, Emily was also going on the Disney World trip. So I ask him about it. He can't lie to my face. He has to say, like, yeah, she's going. And I was like, you don't think that's a problem? You have a sexy selfie on your phone. Well, I just saved that. It's not sexy. It's just that I needed a contact photo. I like to have a photo of everybody on my phone for my contacts. Okay. She calls you at midnight. That's because she's depressed and has no one else to talk to. You're going on a trip with her. Well, we need someone to watch my youngest son because there's a ride that we all want to go on, but he's too short. So that's why we needed someone else to go, because she's going to watch him while the rest of us go on this ride. That was the explanation that I was given for why she was going on the trip, so that she could watch the kid while they were all on this ride one time or something. Okay, he had an explanation for everything. Now, this is a little sneaky, I admit. I don't think 2023 Bren would do this, but 2017 Bren did this. I started recording one night on my phone, discreetly, and I asked him, so does Emily know that you and I are back together? And he was like, what does it matter? And I was like, well, you're going on a trip with, Joe and Becky and Emily calls you all the time late at night. I think she likes you. She should know going into this trip that you have a girlfriend, that you're in a relationship. Does she know you're in a relationship? And he's like, no, it's not important. And I'm like, why don't you tell her? And he said, and I know these were his exact words because I taped it. I said, why don't you tell her you have a girlfriend? And he said, because it would blow up the vacation. If you guys are just buds, as you keep telling me, why would it blow up the vacation for her to know that you have a girlfriend? It didn't make any sense. So 2017 Bren messaged Emily on Facebook and told her that we were back together. I don't think that went well for him, but I have no idea. She didn't respond to me. Something that I learned about Emily over the years is that she's not a girl's girl. She is not. I tried to be nice to her so many times. I tried to befriend her. I always had her back. I defended her to Pete so many times. This woman has no idea how often I had her back, but she has been nothing but super mean to me. But we'll get to that. So he goes on the vacation anyway, but his compromise to me was that he got his own hotel room and didn't stay in like the cabin or whatever with the rest of them. But while he was on this trip, he did not talk to me. Like, I would text him every night, just like, good night. And like, that's all he would text me back, like, good night. I talked to him on the phone like one time and he was super short with me. And I was just like, wow, my boyfriend is on a trip with another couple and a girl who's in love with him. And he has given me 5 minutes of phone time in the week that he's been gone. While he was gone, I took care of his cats for him and cleaned his whole house. And when he got back, I told him that I wasn't happy with the fact that he barely talked to me the entire time that he was gone. And I wasn't expecting him to like have hour-long phone conversations with me every night, but more than like one little text when I know that he's on vacation with another girl, like would have been reassuring, right? And his response to me is, yeah, well, Emily helped my son pick out a keychain for like 20 minutes and I don't think you would have done that. And this began the dichotomy. I was always Pete's fun girlfriend. We could go out, we could party, we could drink, we could go to Chicago, we could go to Minneapolis or Indianapolis or on candle road trips, we could go to concerts, we could go to 6 concerts in 3 days. I was the fun one, but Emily was Mary fucking Poppins. Emily was so great with the kids. The kids loved her. She loved children. She wanted a million children of her own. She was just so good with the kids. She was a domestic goddess. She didn't mind cleaning up after him at all. It was in her nature. And that was the difference between us. But she was no fun. She didn't drink. She didn't go out. She was very introverted. Didn't like doing anything outside of the house. I was the fun one. She was the mom one. And that is the theme of the rest of the time that I talked to him. That was his love triangle. And I was constantly in a battle with this woman that, again, I never met. And in fact, at times, I was in a battle with him and his kid's mother and Emily and me. It was like he always had 3 women in his life. And I got this very small little part of his life when he wanted to give it to me. And I was completely shut out of everything else. So at that point, keeping things in order, sorry, I digressed a little. Okay, so at that point, I decided I'm done with this. He admitted to me that he and her had slept in the same bed one night and cuddled all night. So there was an admission right around that time. I don't remember if it was the same conversation as the keychain. I don't think it happened on the Disney trip though. I think it happened like a week or 2 later. She was living in a different state at the time. She was living in Iowa, but a couple weeks later, maybe, like, she came to Illinois, and at some point it came out. He told me that they had slept in the same bed and cuddled. So I have, back in 2017, an admission that they were more than friends. It's not just sexy selfie. It's not just it'll blow up a vacation. It's now an admission of cuddling, which I think says, like, we're somewhat more than friends. I don't cuddle with my dude friends, you know? I mean, not to say that you can't cuddle with just a friend. I guess you probably could, but I feel like at this point I have enough information to know that they're more than just like buds, bros, you know? Like, there's something going on. But he and I, we break up after the Disney trip. And this is when I started Bren Vlogs. And it's 2017. I think at this point it's maybe fall. And I make a video about this. Why my last relationship was doomed, but I let it drag on for 3 years anyway. And I talk about his court battle and custody battle with his kid's mother. I talk about his messiness and unwillingness to compromise when it came to domestic life, and how he expected me to just come in and help him clean and take care of the kids, but he was willing to give me nothing in return. I talk about Emily and the Disney trip and the lies about it and the whole thing, and I post it on YouTube. And he finds it. Maybe one day he'll find this video. You know what? I kind of like it if Emily did. I think she should probably know what it was like to be me. But again, she's not a girl's girl. She wouldn't care. She'd probably just say some negative shit in the comments. But anyway, he watches the video and he writes me a 5-page letter with a mixtape at the end. And then he attaches a flash drive that has all the songs on it. And in the letter, he is explaining to me that I never knew how you felt until I had to just sit down and watch you talk about it from your perspective, and how enlightening it was to actually have to listen to me, I guess. And now he realizes all the things that he did wrong and blah, 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 blah. I let him back into my life, but I told myself at the time that it was just as friends and that I could just be his friend. Not enough time had passed for me to be able to do that, but I thought I could. So I decided that I'm just going to be friends with him. And during that time that this is all going on, at the same time, he's still in battle with his kid's mother for custody. At this point, crazy stuff is going on with that. Again, their mother at the time going through a lot, I think. She's got several different vices, and she was dating a guy who was very violent. Pete got a no contact order stating that she wasn't allowed to have this violent guy around his kids. We caught her ignoring that no contact order several times. And I was helping. Because, you know, here's the thing. I might not be Mary Poppins. I might not be great with kids. Like, I did kid stuff, but I guess I'm just, like, not a natural kid person like Emily. I don't know. But I cared about those kids. And maybe I showed that less in giving off a maternal vibe and more so in helping him with their health and safety. But I did care. And there were nights that I sat with him in cars, in bar parking lots, trying to catch her. And one night I sat in the car with him outside his kid's mother's house until like 2 a.m. so that we could catch the violent guy who wasn't supposed to be around her kids coming home to the home where she had the kids so that we could call the lawyer so that the lawyer could send the GAL to do a wellness check the next day. And what happened was the GAL comes over. That's like the kid's lawyer. It's like a third lawyer that you get involved. Baby mama lies straight to the GAL's face and says, no, violent guy's not here. But violent guy was there. And GAL opens a door and sees violent guy sleeping on the bed. And she gets custody taken away. So baby mama gets custody taken away. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. He got full custody. She was ordered to pay him child support. He was too proud to take it. He immediately declined the child support, which I'm like, she made you lose your house. I would have taken the child support from her long enough to pay myself back for what I had given her. But he was too proud. He didn't want that, but he got custody. You would think awesome. But then this is where things just get so insane that the story just gets you think it's not going to take any more turns. We're not even halfway through, y'all. I might have to split this into 2 videos. Okay, see if you can keep track of this because I barely could and I was there. He's living in Joe's house. Joe is married to Becky. Emily is Becky's sister. Joe really wants Pete to get with Emily so they can be brother-in-laws. But because the kid's mother loses child support, she forecloses on her condo and she loses it. Pete co-owned the condo, so his credit is now tanked. Kid's mother has nowhere to live. Pete wants to let the kid's mother move in with him in the basement because he feels like he wanted her to be better than she was at the time. He wanted to believe that she could be a good mom for the sake of his kids. He didn't want to admit that at the time, and maybe she's totally fine now, but at the time she was going through it, he wanted the kids to still be able to see their mom, but he knew that wherever she landed, if she had no place to live, he didn't want the kids going over there. So his solution was, I'll let her move in with me, and then the kids can see her, and I'll have eyes on it. I'll know where they are. I'll know they're safe. I get it. But at the same time, it was just she was really taking advantage of him. And it drove me nuts. But he asks Joe, because Joe is his landlord, or Joe's parents are, but Joe's really the middleman. Can I let my kid's mother move into the basement? Joe freaks out. Absolutely not. Joe is mad because Joe wants Pete to hook up with his sister-in-law, Emily, and now Joe's asking if he can let his kid's mother live in the basement. Joe is furious. Joe tells his parents to kick Pete out of the rental, and they do. They end his lease. So Pete loses his home. So now he and his kid's mother are both homeless, and they both have no credit and can't get a place. But don't worry, because baby mama's dad is a realtor, and he is trying to sell a house that he cannot sell because the basement floods every time it rains. So he convinces the owner to rent it out to his daughter, Pete's kid's mother, and he comes to Pete and he says, hey, I got a great deal for you. You move into this house with my daughter, your kid's mother, and if she can't pay rent anymore, if she gets into trouble, whatever, I'll cover her. Pete has admitted to me many times when I've brought it up to him that he is just a go with the flow kind of guy. He doesn't make decisions. He doesn't take action. For example, he would never end a relationship and move on. He, would not actively seek out a new job, but he'll take one if one comes to him. He'll, if the relationship ends, it ends. He is very passive aggressive. He's just very passive. He's just very passive. He's admitted that. He's like, yes, you are right. I am a passive person. He just rolls with whatever. So he doesn't think about, is this a good decision? Should I move in with my kid's mother who has totally been trying to screw me for many years? I've spent $50,000 in court fees trying to get custody of my kids because she's putting them in danger all the time. But yeah, I'll live with her now, sure. He just takes the deal. And some of it, I think, maybe has to do with the fact that his parents were divorced but always lived together, or they got divorced, they lived apart, and then like later they just moved in together and always lived together but in separate bedrooms. So maybe this was normal in his world. And I don't necessarily think an arrangement like that couldn't ever work. But in my mind, this kid's mother had always just been so bad to him, and now he had finally won. He had finally gotten custody and knew that his kids were safe, and also didn't have to keep paying her for doing nothing. And then he just like moved in with her and erased and reset everything. Because when you move back in together, the court doesn't care if you're sleeping together or not. You're not living together again. You got back together in the court's eyes. He and his kid's mother lived together for 3 years. And they had a deal that they would not have significant others over at the house. So I was never invited over there. During the next 3 years, I would see Pete, but it would only be when he wanted to go out, when he could go out. I had to walk away for a minute, take a little breather, calm myself. I know that my tone in this video is coming across very like this and that and this, and I don't like that, but it's what's happening. We're still only halfway through the story. I might need another. So, over the next 3 years, again, never went to Pete's place. We pretty much just hung out at my place, or we would go out. He was very busy. His kids were getting to the age where they were in travel baseball, and Pete, was like insane about it. I used to call him like a dance mom, but for kids baseball, a sports dad, so to speak. And he would totally agree and be like, oh yeah, totally. He would say things like, this is what you got to do if your kids are going to be in the pros. But again, he was a good dad. He put his kids first, but these kids had baseball, and there were 2 of them, and they both had baseball like every night of the week, all year round. He was coaching for one of the kids' teams. This was his priority in life, was creating professional baseball players out of his kids. And they liked it, at least. I don't think he was forcing them to do it at all. But his whole life became about that. So at that point, he really didn't have any time for me. But what I didn't love is that he would try to just squeeze me in here and there. He'd be like, I can meet for a beer after work tonight. And then I'd meet up with him, and then we'd have 1 beer, and he'd be like, okay, gotta go. See ya. And I was like, I got all ready for this, for 1 beer. I still want to be out. And I really felt like he was using me as a gap filler, which I guess maybe that's common, what you do with friends. You just hang out with them here and there. But we were always kind of fluctuating back and forth between friends with benefits, more than friends. It really at this point became 2018, 2019. This was a situationship. It was like we were more than friends, but we weren't officially in a relationship. So who knows what else he was doing. But he would still want to do the concerts. If he had a weekend off, if his parents were going to watch the kids, or if the baby mama was behaving herself and wanted to watch the kids, it was like, oh, let's do something fun. Let's do something fun. Because I was the fun one. But I felt like I was almost being kind of used at that point for how fun I could be and how much fun we had together. But pushed aside when it came to anything else. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but there were times when I needed him in more of a boyfriend relationship capacity. 'Cause, I needed someone to lean on. When I got in my car accident and got my car totaled and felt very alone and had to deal with the whole thing by myself, which I was able to do because I'm a competent, independent woman, but it would have been nice to have some support. But he would disappear during those times. Or when I had to move and buy my first place by myself, that was really stressful for me. I didn't feel like he was really there for me the way that a boyfriend would, but he would use me when he wanted to hang out and have some fun. But he didn't prioritize me in the way of actually setting aside a date night or time for us to actually do something that wasn't convenient for his schedule, which was always just an hour here, an hour there, never hanging out the full night, and baseball came first, and that was all that mattered. But I felt like I was not really in his life. I was a gap filler. I felt like a side piece, kind of. I felt like just someone that he called every once in a while, but I was not involved in the main parts of his life. And at the time, at first it felt like his kid's mother, who he lived with, was his main woman and I was the mistress, even though I knew that they weren't like romantically connected. And then I found out that Emily, who I hadn't really been paying much attention to because A, I didn't see Pete that much, so it didn't come up, but B, she lived in Iowa. I found out that she was moving here to Rockford, Illinois. Like, literally no one moves here on purpose. Like, you don't move here unless you have a reason to move here. We always make the top 10, like, worst cities list every year. People don't just, like, want to move to Rockford, Illinois. She knew no one else here. Pete tried to tell me that she wanted to move here because Joe and Becky were thinking about moving here. Joe and Becky lived in Wisconsin at the time. The only person that she knew who lived here was Pete, and yet Pete swore to me that there's no way she was moving here for him. I think he's not that stupid. I think he definitely knew that she was moving here for him. But he wouldn't have been that to me. He played dumb with me. I don't know. I think it's just because she thinks Joe and Becky are going to move here. Ridiculous. So now Emily lives here in Rockford. And I just bought this place. It's like 2019. Pete is someone who, again, every once in a while we'll go out and we have fun. We have fun when we go out. Sometimes we are more than friends. Sometimes we are just friends. I know that Emily like adopts a cat that he found outside his work. Every once in a while I'll be like, how's that cat doing? He'll blow it off. I'll ask, how's Emily liking Rockford? I don't know, I think she's fine. He always acted like he didn't ever see her or didn't ever talk to her. Whenever I would ask about her, he would change the subject. All through 2018, 2019, getting into 2020, the pandemic. I did find out, though, that Emily started babysitting for Pete's kid's mother. Because Pete's kid's mother had a third kid by the violent guy. So, yeah. So, Pete's kid's mother has the two kids with Pete. Now she has a third kid by violent guy who still isn't allowed to be around Pete's kid. And she is using Emily as a babysitter because, you guys, I mean, Emily, she loves kids. She loves kids. Oh my God, guys. Have I told you how much Emily loves kids? It's all I've ever heard about her is how much she friggin' loves children. She loves children so much because she grew up in a Mennonite community around like a whole bunch of kids. And she was always watching like her nieces and her nephews and her little cousins and everything. And just like kids. She just loves kids. You guys, she's so good with kids. So good. She helped his son pick out a keychain for 20 minutes. I never would have done that. It's time for another one. So Emily and Pete's kid's mother become friends. They actually become buddies, apparently, because Emily is over there all the time watching Pete's mother's third kid and sometimes, apparently, watching Pete's kids too. And Pete tells me that it's because his kid's mother uses women and could see a benefit to being friends with Emily because she's like free babysitting. I don't know the dynamic of their friendship, but they became friends and she became the babysitter. But still, anytime that I asked about her, I always was met with I don't know, I don't really talk to her. I don't really see her, just blowing it off. I don't know. I was just in this weird situationship with this guy who I enjoyed hanging out with a lot. And I want to pause here to just say, if I am on the outside listening to this video, I am probably at this point thinking, why on earth have you put up with this? I mean, in 2017, when I made the video just up through the Disney trip, it was like, why on earth have you put up with this? And yet it kept going. And I just want to point out that if you watch the videos of me and Pete together, I think you can see why I enjoyed hanging out with him. The parts that did work. It was confusing for me because I would know that this guy was mistreating me and that I was in a bad situation. But so many of my friends and family liked him so much. People on YouTube would comment on how great we seemed to get along. It was really a dichotomy. when we were hanging out, when he made time for me, things were great. But he just like never prioritized me, never made time for me. I was his second life. I really started to feel like he had this whole double life thing going on. His main life was living in a house with his kid's mother, Emily the nanny. All of them, his family life, that was his main life. I was this side piece, this person that he saw for a few hours a week here and there when he was able to have fun, when he, didn't have the kids and could get away and he wanted to go out and he wanted to have a drink or he wanted to go to a concert or something. That's what I was. But he never wanted to bring me into the rest of his life. And it kind of goes along with everything that's been going on through this whole video. It used to be that I was allowed into his life, but I had to come in as a maid and clean his house because he wasn't going to change anything about his life for me. Now it was more just like I was on the outside. He would always tell me not to go to his kids' games because his kid's mother was there and there had been past drama, even though the extent of the drama was her telling him one time she wanted to kick my ass. Like, we didn't really ever really have drama, but like it was like better if I didn't go. But I found out from one of my sister's friends who had a kid on the same team that actually Emily was going to all the games. So I think he just didn't want me to go to the games because he was trying to keep me and Emily separate. I mean, really, this guy is pretty brilliant, Pete. He really, for a very long time, for many years, was able to orchestrate this double life where he had both me and Emily, and we did not meet. And I remember making videos about this in the past, and people would comment on YouTube and say, he's using you. He's got 3 women in his life. He's got the baby mama, he's got Emily, and he's got you. You shouldn't be going along with this. And I'd be like, I know, but again, bad online dates, going out with people not having any fun, thinking that I couldn't do any better not because I couldn't do any better like situationally. I could find another guy who like had a decent job in a nice place and, didn't have like a nanny who was in love with him, but I couldn't find anyone that I clicked with who understood me the way that Pete did, And so I kept, again, waffling between like telling myself it was fine because we were just friends. I could just be friends with him. It was fine, and then getting hurt. I remember I was so upset when I found out Emily lived here now. I mean, and then the pandemic happened. The pandemic really did change things a little bit. Oh my God. Roscoe. Nobody's there. If you look closely, that curtain's tore up because of his nails. So the pandemic happens. And y'all know COVID made things weird for everyone. He was the only person I was hanging out with. He was the only person that I was letting come around and be here. He was the only person I was letting come over. And we were doing these cocktail nights. I'd never drank at home. I never had beer or liquor at my house ever. I just went out a lot. COVID happened. We started doing cocktail nights. We'd do theme nights. One night I bought a bottle of banana liqueur. We made banana daiquiris and banana this and that, that kind of thing. We had a lot of fun with it because we always had fun together. We'd dance, we'd play music, we'd pass out on this couch back here. It was good times, but it was infrequent. But as they say, with a lot of people, there were a lot of people who got together or got back together during COVID because it was just a weird time. It was a lonely time. And the same thing happened to me. I started thinking that I wanted to be with him and I wanted to make it work. So we got back together during COVID when we were out of our minds. And we did, at that point, make it official. We were boyfriend and girlfriend again. He was still living with his kid's mother. I had still never been to his house. I still only saw him for a few hours a week. Occasionally a Saturday cocktail night. But we were together. And May of 2021 was his 40th birthday. And we had all just gotten vaccinated. And it was like we could finally hang out with other people again. And I was like, it's your 40th birthday. I have to throw you a party. Like, we should do something. It's 40. It's a big one. I should do something for you. So I decided to throw him a party. But I didn't want to have it here because, like, this is just a condo. It's pretty small. So I co-planned it with his best friend, who is a guy who I really like a lot. I don't know if he is a fake name. We'll call him Bill. So Bill and I co-throw the party. Basically, it's me planning everything, but it's at Bill's house. And Bill is more in charge of the guest list because Bill knows all of Pete's like guy friends and has all their contact info, and I don't necessarily. But I make cupcakes, I get balloons, I get all the food, all of that. So it's his 40th birthday party. And I go over to Bill's house, and I've got all the things and the food and the balloons. And I get there, and all the kids are there. Like, all these people have kids. There's kids running around everywhere. Pete's kids are there. It's a little weird to me because none of the girls are there. I expected, like, when we used to date back at the beginning, 2015, 2016, anytime that I would go to, like, a party at Bill's house or whatever, like, all of their guy friends, their group of dudes, all their wives and girlfriends would be there. These were all people that I'd met that I knew, and I was expecting that they would be at this party, but, like, suspiciously and weirdly, none of them were there. It was just the guys and the kids. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm hanging out with the kids then. For the most part, I'm in the kitchen. I'm hanging out with the kids. At the time, Pete is off somewhere else. And I'm just chatting with his 8-year-old, who it's been 6 years since we met. This is the kid that was 2 when we first met. He's now 8. And I ask the 8-year-old, they had just gotten a lizard. How do your cats like the lizard? And he says, well, this cat likes the lizard like this, and this cat likes the lizard like this cat acts like this. And Twinkie acts like this with the lizard. And I stop and I'm like, Twinkie, like, you know, did you get another cat? Like, Twinkie was not a cat I was familiar with. And he goes, oh, well, you know, Emily wanted to get a cat, and then my dad found this cat outside his work, and Emily decided she was going to adopt the cat, and then I'm like, oh, yeah, that cat's name was Twinkie. So I'm like, oh, so could Emily not keep the cat? Could she not keep Twinkie? And the 8-year-old goes, oh, no, yeah, she still has Twinkie. Yeah, she does. And I go, oh, well, does Twinkie live with you, or does Twinkie live with Emily? And the 8-year-old goes, well, Emily pretty much lives with us now. You ever have one of those moments where just like it feels like your blood goes cold? Emily pretty much lives with us now. I remember that I just felt like I had to get out. I had to leave. I had to get out of there. At this point, every time that I had asked about Emily, I was met with, I don't know, I never see her. I don't talk to her. I don't know. I think she's fine. I remember I took my hand-decorated baseball cupcakes and I just slid them out of my cupcake container so that I could take my container. I left most of the rest of the food. I had a veggie tray. And I just walked out to my car and I just wanted to get out. I just want to get out of there. And I opened the trunk and I like threw the veggie tray and like carrots went everywhere. And I got in the driver's seat and Pete comes like stomping over because he was outside. He's like, what are you doing? And he's yelling at me. He's mad. This is a pattern. This will happen again. And I say, well, your 8-year-old just told me that Emily basically lives with you right now. And he screams at me. Well, you knew that she was watching baby mama's 3rd kid. You knew that she was a babysitter for her. Yeah, I knew that. Didn't know that meant she basically lives with you to the point of where her cat is at your place. Like, a cat's not even like a dog where you can easily transport them. Like, you don't like bring your cat to your friend's house. The cat has met the lizard. The cat is at your house all the time. This is why I'm not the first one who said he was gaslighting me. A therapist of mine used that word first. One of the typical traits of gaslighting, aside from the general fact that it's someone telling you that you're crazy when you're trying to make an observation, it's in your head. But it's also when you should be the one who's upset, but they're trying to make it seem like you're the one who should be getting yelled at. Like, I shouldn't be upset. He's yelling at me in a time when he should be comforting me and reassuring me. He has done something wrong and he should be apologizing to me. But instead, his reaction is to yell at me like I am causing a scene, which I wasn't. No one was there. We're outside by ourselves. He's yelling at me like I'm causing drama. I'm causing a fight. He's trying to make this all seem like my fault when it's all his fault. This is not the last time that this will happen. I leave. I'm crying. I'm calling friends. Patricia, if you're watching this, you're one of the friends that I called. I called my sister. I called my friend Cassie. I tell them all what happened. I tell them. Emily basically lives with us now. Everyone is appalled. It's terrible. I didn't talk to him for maybe like a month. After that, I really thought that was it. That was the end. That was the breakup. But it wasn't. It wasn't over. It was not over yet. Should have been. I believe that what happened next was a combination of two things. He had diabetic retinopathy and I got Roscoe. He's back there. I hear him. I don't see him. He had started to have problems with his vision. He'd been diabetic since a young age. I was concerned about it. I was worried about that. I wanted to know what was going to go on. I knew he had a doctor's appointment with an ophthalmologist. I didn't know what was happening. I wanted to reach out, but at the same time, like I didn't. I also got Roscoe. I had been looking for a dog for months. I'd been trying really hard to get one. I tried to rescue. I'd filled out a bunch of applications. That wasn't happening because it was the pandemic and everyone wanted a dog and the shelters were empty, which was great, but it was hard for me. And then I found Roscoe on a Facebook post and I'd always wanted a Frenchton and I decided to go for it. I went to Minnesota. I got Roscoe. I drove home. Roscoe pooped all over my car twice, puppy diarrhea, on the 6-hour drive home. By the time I got home here late at night with a new dog, I needed help. I needed someone to watch the new puppy while I was cleaning poop out of my car. I needed something, and I texted him. I wanted to know about his eye appointment, and I was like, can you just come over and help me with this puppy? And he was like, you got a puppy? And I was like, please come help me. I let him come over that night because I was in a situation where, again, I was doing something all by myself, getting a puppy, and I just wanted the support of another person. And he came over, and he helped watch the puppy while I cleaned the poop out of my car. And we started talking again. And the same thing happened that always happens, which is he doesn't treat me well. He doesn't want me in his main part of his life. He's keeping me apart from his kids, apart from his house, apart from his good friend, Emily. You know, he's keeping me separate. But when he does have time for me, when we do hang out, it's so much fun. It's so great. But Pete and I do have a conversation at one point where I'm talking about Emily, and he does this thing that he loves to do where he compares his relationship with Emily to my relationship with a friend I have named Brendan. My friend Brendan is just a friend. We have never cuddled all night. He's a buddy of mine that I know through my friend Cassie, but because one time I went on a trip to Canada while Pete and I were not together, Cassie and her husband and Brendan, I think he just uses it as a way to get himself out of trouble. Well, yeah, but I went to Disney World with Emily, but you went to Canada with Brendan. Totally different situation. Brendan and I, again, totally just buds. Nothing has ever happened between us. Pete has met Brendan multiple times, but when you're doing something wrong, like Pete obviously was, you're going to grasp at straws to try to make false comparisons to get yourself out of trouble. But anytime that we were arguing about Emily, he'd always be like, but you have a guy friend too. You know, it was kind of that. It was really dumb. There was really no basis of comparison. But one day, you know, we're talking about what happened, and he brings up Brendan again. And I say, I could call Brendan right now and he would tell you that nothing has ever happened between us and that he and I are just buds who have like see each other every once in a while. We don't even really hang out one-on-one, like maybe a couple times we have, but Brendan has like like he lives with his girlfriend now, like very serious relationship. And I love his girlfriend and we're all friends and we all hang out. Like it's nothing at all comparable. But I said, could you do the same? Could you have Emily tell me that there's nothing between you and her? And I essentially proposed that. I was like, if there's really nothing between you and Emily, then I want to hear it from Emily. Now, remember how I said back in 2017, when I found out about the Disney trip, I messaged Emily to let her know that he and I were back together, and I never heard back from her at that point. Well, Pete takes me up on my offer. He says, okay, I will have Emily text you. And one day, I get a message from Emily, and she's like, look, I don't want anything to do with your relationship problems. I don't want to know you. I don't want to get coffee with you. I don't want any part of this. Yes, me and Pete are just friends. That's it. Bye. Don't talk to me anymore. Like, it was really, really bitchy. And I will tell you, there were lots of times when I would be arguing with Pete and I would defend Emily and I would say, you're screwing over me and her. You're hurting me and you're hurting her. You're playing both of us. I always defended her too, because I knew that she was just this young girl. By the way, 15 years younger than him. I don't know why she was interested, but I had her back and I certainly would have gotten coffee with her. It would not be the first time that I had collaborated with a guy who was cheating on me with the other girl that he was cheating with, and we together would confront him. You know what I mean? But no, I mean, Emily was not interested in that at all. But she didn't have to be so mean to me. I had not done anything to her. I felt like her and I probably had a lot in common. He was screwing us both over. But anyway, I need to relax, you guys. I'm sorry that I'm yelling. I need to relax. We start hanging out again, and I give him an ultimatum. If we're going to keep hanging out, if we're doing something here, I'm done messing around. I'm not your friend. I'm not your situationship. And I am not going to be your side piece in your second life anymore. If you're ever going to see me again, we're going to move in together. You're moving out of your kid's mother's house, and you and I are getting a place together. And to my surprise, he agrees. It seemed like an okay idea at the time because this was a man that I loved. And I'd been on a lot of dates with a lot of people. This was someone I connected with, who understood me. I hadn't seen his messy house in 3 years, so I'd kind of forgotten how messy he was. His kids were older. It was a little easier now. I never saw him. The big problem was I never saw him. But if we lived together, I would see him. I would see him in passing. He would at least come home at night. We would be able to hang out before bed, even if he had baseball 7 nights a week. It seemed to be the thing that needed to happen. No more screwing around. I am surprised to this day that he did go along with this to the point of where we got a realtor. We looked at multiple houses. We got pre-approved for a loan. I had all of his financial information. He gave it to the bank. We got the joint thing. I could see all of his accounts, his whole credit report, the whole thing. We found a house that was pretty good. It had the main things that we wanted, which was an in-ground pool, 4 bedrooms, because we both work from home, and we wanted the kids to have their own rooms. We both needed office space. So we needed 4 bedrooms at least with an office. We wanted an in-ground pool, and there was one other thing. Oh, it had to be in a specific school district for his kids. There's a lot of different school districts around here, so it really limited us to have to be in this particular school district. But he felt like if he moved out of the district, it would give the mom a leg up on the custody battle because she was still in their existing school district. So that was very important. So we found a house that was like it met those big qualifications. It wasn't perfect. It was an older house. It was in a very high tax bracket, but it had those main things, and we put in an offer, and our offer got approved. We got the house, and I posted on Facebook, me and Pete just got approved for a house. We got our offer accepted on a house. It's got an in-ground pool. We're going to have a pool party. And I had a gif of like dogs jumping in a pool. I would say 4 minutes after I made that post, Pete calls me and he says, "Did you post about us getting our offer approved?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, because my kid's mother just called me, because Emily called her, because Joe called her." Okay, so get this. 4 minutes after I post that me and Pete and I, well, I guess at 20 minutes my screen goes to sleep even though I'm still recording. Okay, so I post on Facebook, Pete and I just got our offer accepted on a house. Joe, I'm not even friends with Joe on Facebook, but I'm friends with Becky, which I had forgotten. But Joe is on his wife Becky's account, or maybe Becky told him. Whatever it is, Joe sees that I made this post. It is such an emergency to Joe that the first thing that he does is call Emily and tell Emily that Pete and I are buying a house together. Emily calls the kid's mother calls Pete. So the kid's mother found out that way that he's moving out. My point is, again, if Emily is, which he has stuck to his guns, that Emily is nothing to him. They are just friends. They see each other in passing because she's friends with the kid's mother and babysits for her. But that's it. So why would it be of such great concern to Joe, to Emily, that within 4 minutes of me posting, like, it's the phone chain blows up and everyone knows that we're buying a house together? I don't know. Seems suspicious to me. So it had almost seemed a little too easy that Pete just agreed to get a house with me and was going along with all of it, and it was actually going to happen. So of course it didn't happen. We did the inspection on the house. Now, I was not in love with the house. It had some problems. It was a little older. The basement was gross. It wasn't perfect. It was okay though. Like, I was still going to do it. But Pete found out the week after we had the offer accepted, the week of the inspection, that his job was in danger. Honestly, I don't know how much to believe that. He'd gotten some bad news at work. He'd gotten that same exact news before. They're cutting positions. They're moving people. Pete was a computer programmer. It's like the most desirable in-demand job in America right now. I wasn't worried. He could get another job. You know, if he really loved, I didn't think he was going to lose his job, but if he did, he could get another one. I wasn't worried about it. But he was worried about it, or using it as an excuse to back out. And I let him back out because I was not in love with the house. So we backed out. We got our deposit back because we blamed it on the inspection. I think they knew that was bullcrap because the inspection wasn't that bad. But we didn't buy that house. There was one part I left out. I forgot to mention. When Pete and I got back together and decided to buy the house, my proposal to him was not just, okay, but we have to buy a house together. It was also, if you hear from Emily, I want to know about it. I knew that I had no grounds for telling him he wasn't allowed to ever talk to Emily again, because after all, you know, she watches so-and-so's kid. I knew that he was going to see her. I knew he was going to see her because she was friends with the baby mama, because she babysat the kids. I knew it. And so I didn't feel like I had the power to tell him never to see her again. But I did tell him multiple times, If you talk to her, if you see her, I just want to know about it. I don't want to be blindsided anymore by your 8-year-old telling me at your birthday party that I threw you. I want to know. I want to be your main partner. I don't want to be your side piece. I don't want you living with other people, having this whole other life, and I am just this tiny little part of your life. I just want to know if you see Emily, if you talk to her, I just want you to tell me, because I want to be your number one. I want to know what's going on with you when, I'm not there. I want you to share your day with me. I just want to know. And I got to the point where I was being a little annoying, but on purpose. I'd be like, hey, so if you were to see Emily at the grocery store, what would you do? And he'd be like, I'll tell you about it. And he'd get super mad, but I wanted to make sure that there was no ambiguity. So yes, we would have that conversation a lot. Have you talked to Emily? And he'd be like, no. And I'd be like, but what are you going to do if you do? And he'd be like, oh my God, I will tell you. I was really annoying. But there had to be no ambiguity. And I knew that because, again, he was the king of gaslighting, lying, manipulation. I had to make sure it was clear. It was crystal clear. He knew if he talked to her, he had to tell me about it. What do you think happened? Take a guess. Take a wild guess. There was a weekend in September 2021 where we had like 4 concerts in 3 days or something. And it was like we went up north, then we had concerts in the city. The last one was in St. Louis on a Tuesday night, and it was a band that he wanted to see. It was Group Love, one of his favorite bands. So we go to St. Louis. We're at the end of this string of concerts. We're together. We're boyfriend and girlfriend. We're still technically looking for a house, though the search had cooled a little bit. And Wednesday morning after the concert, we're in the hotel room in St. Louis, and he's in the shower, and his phone alarm is going off. So I am not my sister and her boyfriend. I have never looked at a guy's phone that I'm dating. I feel like if you have to do that, you shouldn't be together. But his phone's going off. The alarm is going off. I have to look at his phone. But right on there, on the main screen, are notifications that he sent money via PayPal to Emily and also like 4 missed calls from her. And I took a picture of his phone screen with my phone because I knew that he would deny it later. Looking back now, like, girl, what were you doing? I waited until we drove home 5 hours. We were sitting in my driveway, and I say, hey, have you talked to Emily lately? And he goes, no, I told you I would tell you. And I said, well, why are you lying to me? Because I saw on your phone when your alarm went off when you were in the shower that you had 4 missed calls and you had PayPal'd her money. And he does the exact same thing that he did when I confronted him at the birthday party. Or not really confronted him. He confronted me at the birthday party about why I was leaving. I'm the one who has a reason to be upset. He is the one who has done something wrong. I have caught him doing something wrong. He should apologize, grovel, be sad, kiss my butt. But instead, he gets super mad, goes and flies into a rage, screaming at me. I don't even remember what he was screaming at me about. Just causing drama, getting mad, being mad at me for getting mad at him for something that he did wrong. We somehow, I think because I'm embarrassed that my neighbors are going to hear, make it inside, but I know that my neighbors still can hear. It's a condo. I'm sorry, guys. I'm friends with all my neighbors, and they have really been through it with me. He's just screaming at me for being, I don't know, too restrictive. He never screamed at me for looking at the phone, because I think he knew that, like, that was an unavoidable thing. That was a losing argument. Like, his alarm was going off. But it was just like, it doesn't matter. It was a lot of, she watches the kids. Oh, I remember he was yelling at me like, we wouldn't have been able to go on this trip unless she watched them. And me being like, and all you had to do was tell me about it. All I ever asked was that you tell me about it. And you agreed to that so many times. You agreed. And this is why I made him agree to it like 75 times, because I just knew in my heart that he would keep creeping around. It was so much of like, there's nothing between us. I don't know why you're like this. I don't know why you care. There's never been anything between us. You and Brendan, this, that, and this. You know, just the same shit over and over and over again. The sad thing is, that big fight wasn't even the end of it. Because that was September, and the last time that I hung out with him in a more than just buds way was New Year's Eve. I don't even remember what happened the next few months. I think it was just more of the same. I was lonely. I was bored. There were certain things that I liked about hanging out with him, and we hung out a little bit more. But also I know that during that time, I started to really think about what my life would be like if I were single. Because every time that I had broken away from Pete in the past, I had gone on bad online dates, and on basis of comparison, Pete didn't seem that bad because these dates would go terribly and whatever. The problem was I was comparing Pete to bad online dates. And I started to really think towards the end of 2021 what my life would be like if I were just single. Really for the first time in my life, because in 2013, 2014, when I was online dating, I wanted a boyfriend bad back then. I know what it's like to want to be in a relationship. But I think the problem was that I wasn't imagining a possible alternative for myself. I really started to look at my retirement plan through my job. I started to think about what I would want my retirement to look like as a single person who didn't have children. Who's going to take care of you when you get older, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I started to actually plan for my future, something that I hadn't really done before. And I decided that my best life when I retire, honestly, would probably be like fostering dogs. I really, really want to do that. I can't do that here in the condo, which is why I have a goal now of getting a house, just a small one with a fenced-in yard in unincorporated, so that I can not have a limit on how many dogs I have. I would love to have like 4 dogs of my own and also be able to foster. If I could wake up every morning and be surrounded by 10 dogs, I will be happy. But I started to look at, again, just my finances, retirement, what living alone would be like. And that was when I could finally break away from Pete. When I finally realized that it wasn't a matter of Pete versus other guys, it was a matter of Pete versus not Pete. That I would rather actually be alone and be single than be with Pete. And when I realized that I'm okay on my own, that I will be fine, that I can focus on friendships and other types of connections, not even knowing that I would meet Ian, that there would be other loves in my life. But at that time, just realizing, you know what? It's fine if I don't date anyone again. Being alone is better than being with Pete. And it wasn't until I really realized and decided that I would rather be single than be with Pete that I could leave Pete. We went out on New Year's Eve. We got in a dumb little argument. That was it. And I decided, okay, this time I'm really done. And I really decided in 2022, my goal was to make friends. I was still on the dating websites, but actually I met a good friend, my friend Robin, on a dating website, but we never dated. We were just buds. So I was still using those to like network and get to know people and get out of the house. But I also started doing things on my own and just like focusing on making friends and making like girlfriends and just like trying to better my life. And I was finally just done with that crap with Pete. I contacted Pete 6 months later, Ian and I were fighting a lot, and I knew that we were gonna break up. And one night when Ian and I were in a fight, I did a classic move. Numb the pain of your new breakup by contacting the last guy that you cared about that you don't care about anymore. It was a combination of that, but also there was a legit, genuine concern of mine that his nephew had cancer, and I really wanted to know how that was going. I had kept thinking about that, but I also didn't want to do what I did when I contacted him about his, eye problems. Like, I did really want to know how the eye thing went, but also I knew in my head I was using it as an excuse to contact him again. So I wasn't trying to do that. I was just praying for the nephew and hoping things were going okay. But that one lonely night in June or whatever it was, when I was in a fight with Ian, I did message Pete to numb my pain. And also, bonus, I would get to find out how the nephew was doing. And I remember I texted him and just said, like, hey, how's your nephew? And he wrote back, hey, stranger, and then answered my question. And it was kind of good to chat with him again. We chatted about music a little bit, and that was kind of it. But we loosely started talking again after that. And when Ian and I really did break up that July 2022, that was the first time I hung out with Pete again. And it was, again, on my part, trying to numb the new pain with the old pain, which kind of works, if I'm being honest. It doesn't not work. That was when Pete and I started becoming kind of loose buds again. And even though I got back together with Ian, like I said, Ian was okay with the fact that I talked to Pete. And Pete would tell me that he was okay. So basically, as soon as I messaged him in June, like, I knew he was going to be with Emily, the girl that I'm crazy. You're crazy, Bren. There's no way. She's just Becky's stupid little sister. I would never. Her and I, there's nothing between us. You're crazy for thinking that. Obviously, they were together. Obviously, he was in a love triangle with both of us. His plan was keeping us apart because that was the only way that he could keep us both in his life. And I do feel like for Pete, again, I was the fun one. The number one compliment, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I got a lot of problems. But the number one compliment that I get from guys that I go out with is that I'm fun. I'm a little fat. I'm really tall. I'm extremely opinionated. I'm very much an independent woman. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I am fun. We will have fun. I've been on some bad online dates with some guys who could not make conversation at all or whatever. By the end of the night, we're having fun. And that's what I was to Pete, but Emily was the Mary Poppins, the domestic goddess, but she doesn't drink. She doesn't like to go out. She's very introverted. And he, between the two of us, could get everything that he wanted in a woman. If he could combine us, we'd probably make his perfect woman. But instead, what he decided to do was just in his passive-aggressive way, keep us both on the hook for as long as he could so that he could take advantage of both of us. It seemed like it was really just a battle of endurance between us. Who was going to put up with his shit longer? And she won. She won the endurance competition. Congratulations, you win the man who is 15 years older than you with kids. What can I say? But in talking to Pete again, and just like, there was never a question. I just knew he was with her. And then sure enough, I don't know if in July when we started hanging out again, if she lived with him, but she moved in with him very shortly after. And at one point he told me that he was trying to have a baby with her, although then later he wasn't again or something. I don't know. But they're like together now. I hope he is treating her better than he treated me. He has told me that he feels bad because she does clean up after him all the time, because that's just how she was raised. She was raised to be like, very traditional woman who takes care of kids and cleans the house. And he feels bad sometimes that, she's always cleaning up after him, and he tells her she doesn't have to. But he doesn't clean it. He doesn't feel bad enough to clean it himself, I'm sure. So, maybe that is the life that she enjoys living. I'd shoot myself in the head if it was me. So the very last time that I hung out with Pete, I told him, We were drinking a beer. We were talking about our lives. And I told him, Ian's moving out. And he goes, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but we just can't cohabitate anymore. And he's like, wow, I'm surprised. And I'm like, why are you surprised? Did you think I was going to like be with him forever? And Pete says, I just thought you'd last a little longer. I don't know what that means. But then Pete said, well, cool, I can come over and have cocktails again. Yeah, I guess in a way, I'm still just a lot less now letting him have it all. I am still letting him live with Mary Poppins, have her clean up after him, have his double life, but every once in a while, now it's just not twice a week, it's, once every 2 months, we still hang out and he still gets to have that fun with Bren a little bit. We're not going to concerts, we're not going out of town. So why do I do it? Like Ian said, this guy treated you like shit. I just don't understand why you want to be friends with him. I've thought about it. I thought about it in preparation for this video, and here's what I think that it is. Have you ever wished that you could get advice from yourself, but like in 5 years? Or that you could get advice from a version of yourself who's not emotional and in the moment and going through what you're going through right now. A version of yourself who knows you as well as you know yourself, but has a little bit more distance and perspective from what you're going through at that moment. That's Pete for me. Pete is a lot of times the first person that I want to bounce things off of because Pete just knows me so well. He knows how I think. He knows how I work. And sometimes I just want his opinion on what I'm going through or what I'm facing because I feel like I'm going to get the answer that I would get from myself if I had like a clone somewhere who wasn't like all worked up or emotional about the situation and can think about it clearly. Like the situation that I'm in with my sister and her boyfriend where we don't really get along and all of that. I've talked to Ian about it, but Ian doesn't really know the guy. He doesn't have the history. He doesn't know me the same. But like, I feel like Pete knows them. He's been around. He's been through the whole thing. He knows me. He knows the situation. And I don't know. I think that's a lot of what I get from still hanging out with Pete here and there. Is I get to like bounce things off of him. I get to talk to someone who knows me, who's always known me really well, and who thinks the same way that I do. Ian doesn't really necessarily think the same way that I do, which sometimes can be good, but like, it's just a different experience. But as I mentioned earlier, the last time that I talked to him, let's see, what was the date? The last time that I talked to him, the date that my dad had surgery. Okay, so October 20th was my dad's surgery, and on the 21st is when I asked him about the oncologist. October 21st. Today is November 13th. Nothing. And like, should I be disappointed? I mean, typically we talk more often than this. Not always. Sometimes a month goes by before we hit each other up. But like, it is a little disappointing, I guess. Like, I thought we were like kind of friends to the level of like, last thing I said to you was my dad just got out of surgery for possible cancer. And now 3.5 weeks have gone by and I haven't heard a peep. And it's made me wonder if the reason he hasn't texted me is because when I text him that night, it was like 11 p.m. on a Friday, which I would never normally text him at that time. Usually, if we were talking, it would be like during the middle of a weekday when he's at work, whatever. And I had to wonder, is it because Emily was there and she got mad that I was texting him that late? And if that is the case, how does your own medicine taste, Emily? Because she did that to me all the time, and I was supposed to just be like, it's fine, they're buds. I don't know that that's the situation. I have no idea if she even knows or anything, but it is a little odd that I haven't heard from him at all, and this video might have gone differently had we been talking. But for someone who was so excited that Ian was moving out because now he can come have cocktails, but then I tell him that my dad, who he knows, like obviously we dated for 7 years, he knew my dad, And like, not a peep. I guess it just is a reminder to me that like, this is not a friend. This is not someone who cares about you. This is an ex. And if you talk to him, I guess it's just a mutually beneficial interaction that you're having, but like, keep it in check. I want to say that this is the last video that I will ever do about Pete. And it is. It is the last video that I will ever do about Pete. My sister actually was texting me the other night, and she brought up Pete. And I'm like, I don't really want to talk about him. Like, it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years. I don't need to reflect on this anymore. I don't need to, like, talk about this still. But when I make my video about Ian, it probably will come up again because I think that part of the appeal of Ian was that he was not Pete. And there were a lot of things that I realized when I dated Ian, like I said earlier, like Ian was like, Ian has kids, but he still makes time for me. Ian has kids and he loves his kids and he puts them first. But I still also feel like I'm a priority in his life. I feel like Ian and I are a team. And when something comes up with the kids, he addresses it with me and we make a decision together because we're partners who are both in charge of watching the kids when they're with us. Like, it was just such a different experience and so much more normal that dating Ian made me realize how effed up dating Pete was and how he treated his partner versus his kids was. But at the same time, I was never really, not since that very beginning first couple of years, basically only pre-Emily was I ever Pete's partner. You know, past that, I was always his side piece. He tried not to let me think that, but honestly, that's what I was. But I'll save a lot of that for the video that I do about Ian whenever I'm ready to talk about that. Like I said, Ian and I are still fine. I said that in my last video. Like, we're still hanging out. We don't really care about defining our relationship right now and what it is. What it is he's still doing laundry here. We're still getting together all of the time. He's been texting me while I'm making this video. And he's still going to play trivia with my family tomorrow night. Well, folks, I'm almost out of my second beer, which means that it's time to go to bed. And also it's Monday and it's 8:15 and I've got the carpet guy possibly coming tomorrow and I have to work. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I nervously await your comments. I absolutely 1,000% understand if a lot of you are saying the same thing that Ian has said to me, which is like, why would you want to even talk to this guy at all anymore after everything that he did to you? I'm expecting some of that. But in the past, who knows? In the past, I've made videos about him and all the ways that he jerked me around, and I would still get a lot of comments that were like, you guys are so good together, because of the videos that he was in and how well we got along. So, if anything, I hope it's been an entertaining and interesting story. Hopefully, you at least got something out of the 7 years of my life. Ooh, all right. That's it. That's a wrap. Thanks for watching. See y'all later.